Welcome, everybody, to Infinite Impact Radio and TV, the show for impact influencers by impact influencers with world-changing missions. And I'm really excited today. I've got somebody brand new. I'm meeting her for the first time, so we get to meet her together. Her name is Sarah Santacroce.
You
She
did it.
is, and I got it right. I got a thumbs up, it looks like. So she is the founder of the Gentle Business Revolution, which we're going to go into, which I found very interesting. She's a coach, a podcaster, and a LinkedIn consultant. So I'm just going to leave it there and let you sort of fill us in where I sort of slipped up and didn't get everything right, or let us know if there's anything else you want to cover.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I mean, no, I think you got it all. The only kind of secret information that people are sometimes curious about is that I'm based in Switzerland, born and raised. And yeah, I'm working from my home office, but usually just like you know, working with people from all over the world. And that's what makes it so exciting, right?
Isn't that exciting? It's nice just to have these conversations with people all around the world. I would have never imagined this was possible when I was younger.
I know, I know. Yeah, and it's interesting, and we'll talk about that later. But this, access to easy technology makes it so nice and wonderful to do marketing and run our business. But there's also a certain risk with that, and we can go into that later.
Oh
But
yeah. So leave that loop open for a little bit and we'll come back to
yes.
it. That's a good little hook there. So I wanted to ask you, I like to ask everybody, what their origin story is. What got you into what you're doing, not necessarily right now, but started the journey and
Right.
brought you to this point. So if you wouldn't mind
Mhm.
sharing that with us, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah. Well, what I have kind of the official origin story, but that's the boring one. So I'm going to give you the unofficial one.
We like
So
unboring, so that's fine. That would be
exactly,
perfect.
right. So on my website, it says hippie turned business coach. And so I grew up in a hippie community where my parents and a bunch of friends, they bought an apartment building and with 6 apartments, and we each, each family lived in their apartment, but we had a lot of common space, a lot of common eating, a lot of common decision making and partying. And I basically I have one real sister, but then I have at least 3 or 4 other people that I call my siblings, right? So this upbringing, very community oriented, very fairness oriented. So yeah, like the hippie values. And I moved out of my parents' apartment around 18. I moved to Paris and, really just wanted to discover the world. And then slowly moved into business, first in a couple of corporate jobs. And then at about 30, I launched my own business and then went into, like you said, LinkedIn. So the complete opposite from you would think a hippie would do, right? And really went into this kind of sterile professional network, and almost like there's always like this hidden part of me that I had to kind of put away and just be like this professional Sarah, and let's get to business, and business is business, and it's all very serious. Until about 4 years ago, when I had my 40-year-old crisis, midlife crisis. I thought, what am I doing? Who am I? What, am I going to be this kind of person for the rest of my life? And so that's when the Gentle Business Revolution was born. And the real Sarah came back with the real, community values and equality and all of that.
I love that. And this is such a recurring theme from the people that I interview on this podcast, the person that, introduced us together to each other and some of the other guests. It seems like there's such a polarity in where they started. Sometimes even like in your case, you started somewhere else, then moved into something that was the exact opposite and now come back
Right.
to it.
Yeah.
But it's such a recurring theme and it's really interesting. I'm just curious if you don't mind sharing with us, you mentioned you hit 40. and you had sort of that aha, that epiphany, you know, hit that wall and decided you wanted to go back to your roots almost. So if you don't mind, would you mind diving a little deeper into that? Because I think our audience would love to hear that.
Yeah. I think what started this questioning was Simon Sinek's book, Start with the Why. And I felt this huge pressure on me, kind of like with this movement of, you know, you got to do what you love and you got to start with the why. And I'm like, well, I don't really love what I do. Yeah, it's you know, it's good. I love working with my clients on the LinkedIn consulting, but it's not really, I'm not adding any meaning. I'm just kind of paying the bills. And so I decided after, like, you know, reflection, I decided, well, I guess that's just not for me. I'll just find my why somewhere else. And I think the minute I did that, I kind of released something and said, okay, no more pressure. I don't have to find my why. And the minute I did that, that's when the why came to me. And I had this, you know, download or whatever you want to call it. I'm like, oh, I have to reserve the domain name, The Gentle Business Revolution. So I think there is kind of this buzz around, you know, you have to start with the why and find your passion and your purpose. And it can be kind of like pressuring, and people are like, well, what do I do with that? What if I'm in a job where that is not the case? And so for me, that really meant just letting go and saying, okay, I'm going to just continue doing what I'm doing. And eventually it came to me. So it's an interesting journey.
That's great, because it is a pressure. I've gone through something similar recently, and the same thing. It was when I pushed and pushed and pushed, and nothing was happening. And then when I just, I actually explained this to somebody. It was during meditation, which was part of my new morning routine, where finally it was, I've been looking for a way to explain it. And I appreciate what you said, because you said it was like it was downloaded into you. And I had the same exact feeling, and I haven't been able to express it. So I appreciate that. That is awesome. Now I know how to express it when people ask me that question. So that's great. So now at that point, now you've moved towards the Gentle Business Revolution, excuse me. So I'm just curious to learn more about that, and, you know, what that means, the meaning behind it, and what the goal is, how you plan to sort of shine that out to the world to attract and affect the right people.
Right. Yeah, so it's still in transition. It's something that I'm evolving into, and the main mission, what I realized, so going back to my upbringing and all of that, why I was in business was to bring more empathy and kindness to the business world. It's not that I didn't want to be in the business world anymore. I just didn't want to be how everybody else thought of business. I wanted to bring my natural, you know, gentle self to the business. And so I thought that was my mission. And when I reflected upon how can I have an impact, what do I have to bring, what kind of skills do I have, I realized that it was, you know, had to do with marketing. I had 12 years of experience running an online business, marketing my own business, taking all of these marketing programs out there, seeing also the way that people are marketing and not finding it fitting anymore. Like I felt like heart-centered entrepreneurs, they wanted a different way, different models for marketing. And so that's where I thought I could have an impact by really making people see that there is a different way to market. It's not just because what we see out there and that kind of the hypey and aggressive marketing that we have become used to, and we just, a lot of people think that that's the only way, right? Because that's what we see out there. So making them understand that there is a different way, and kind of showing them the different approach to marketing.
Yeah, I love that. That is definitely true. And I think I see the same trend. It seems like there's so many changes in the world of entrepreneurship. You know, in the past, I remember when I was growing up, somebody described it in a way that, like, when you saw entrepreneurs, I think of the little Monopoly character, the guy holding the money bags, and, you know, everybody else is living in little shacks and poor. And now we're starting to see that, hey, and I actually follow someone who his motto is earn more to give more.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I love the way that trend is going. And I think you're tapping right into it. I think you've hit a really good vein, because it makes total sense that, there is a better way.
Yeah.
And I guess if you would, if you have a moment, could you just share maybe sort of one way that you sort of see marketing as being different when done in a gentle way as compared to what we are, I guess, bombarded with on a daily basis?
Right. Yes. So what I did is I looked at the 7 P's of marketing and thought that they just don't apply anymore to today's entrepreneur. And I kind of revamped them and said, well, if we really want to come to business with more of this heart-centered approach, then isn't it important that we start with ourselves and look at ourselves first and figure out who we are, right, as entrepreneurs, and what we want, what our values are. So this value of empathy and kindness. Well, if we bring more of that to our marketing, then we will also attract more of people who are, also attracted to these kinds of values. So I kind of flipped the whole model around, because usually people say start with your ideal client, your client avatar, right? And that's still important. Yes, the P of people is still in there. But I said, well, let's start with ourselves first. We have this opportunity today to be entrepreneurs and run their business the way we want and according to our values. And yet people struggle so much and they apply everybody else's marketing. So it's really about bringing more of you to your marketing. And that was a long detour to come to your question. So if
Oh, I
we
love it,
then
though.
look,
That was awesome. I love it. I love it.
sorry about that. Yeah. So to kind of look at the different ways of marketing is like the way we are doing it now, and I'm raising my hand, have been doing it for 12 years that way, because all we see is the big gurus or the ones that have figured it out and share their marketing systems. So it's like, oh, here's the recipe for success. You apply this, you'll get success. First of all, it's their definition of success. Is it really also ours? So start, questioning these assumptions, because what works for them may not work for you. And so really kind of giving yourself permission and saying, well, okay, this is one way of doing it, but what if I do it differently, because I have different values, different definitions of success. And the other thing I wanted to mention when we look at the 2 different ways of marketing is the traditional, the hypey kind of marketing, the one that we all find icky, is always negative. It's like focusing on the negative, right? It's like talk about their pain, talk about their struggle.
Yes.
And when we reframe that and say, yes, we understand your struggle. Maybe we have been there. We show empathy and focus on making them understood and seen and heard. But then we can move on, because the consumer today, he's much smarter. We don't need to spend half hour or whatever, two pages telling them how bad of a situation they're in. We can go to the positive state. So it's a
Right.
much more positive outlook on marketing, I think, that empowers the consumer rather than disempowering him. In the traditional marketing, it's all like, it's this hustle marketing. So they buy, and then they have to keep buying because they never get empowered in a way.
Right.
Does
Yes. Oh,
that
I
make
love
sense?
that. That makes 100% sense. And one thing I'd like to go back and point out to the listeners and viewers, one thing you said that I think is very important. You're talking about, finding your authentic self and putting
Right.
that out there, because here's the amazing thing about that, is I'm sure that if people would just do that, they will realize they have no competition
Right.
whatsoever, because
Yeah.
you are you, and you will attract the people that are attracted to you. And I
Yeah.
remember, I don't know who said this, but I think it has to do with the Coast Guard, where they say when they go rescue people and they're coming in and there's a shipwreck, or, the people are in the lifeboat and it's overturned and people are in the water, Well, when they come and they only have a certain amount of time to help, or they can only help a certain amount of people, they have to focus on the ones that swim towards them. So if you just rise into your authentic self and be your authentic self, then you're going to attract the right people to you. So you literally have no competition. And then you can resort to, or not resort to, the old ways of marketing and do more of what you're discussing, and it'll work beautifully.
Exactly, because otherwise you're a commodity, and what people do when there's commodities, they compare prices.
Yes.
Right? Because you cannot compare stories or values, or this is much harder, because there's an emotional attachment to a story or a value, where there's no emotional attachment to a price. It's just a number. So
yes.
If you have the exact same skill as someone else, but you're much more expensive, well, then the person's probably going to choose the cheaper option.
Yes, definitely. I love that. So I guess what I'd like to do, one thing I like to ask this question, because as entrepreneurs, a lot of entrepreneurs are listening to this. One thing, and this was a problem I had, and it's something that I know when I speak to others that they run into this too, is that there are so many options. So many, it's like you can chase after something, especially when you get online and you start looking at, it's like, I'm rising into my authentic self. I'm feeling this calling to do something. And all of a sudden now it's opening the doors to a million different ways to do it. So what kind of advice would you give those people to simplify, to just, laser focus on the one thing that's going to give them the biggest impact, whether it's on the people they serve or themselves?
You mean in terms of finding what to do, or finding a way to promote what they do?
Not necessarily. Yeah, probably more of what to do, not necessarily, to promote it, but it's like I've got this calling, but now there's so many options of ways to advance that calling. How do I move from being in the corporate world into an entrepreneur who is sharing my mission?
Yeah. I would highly recommend this book called Ikigai. It's this Japanese term that means, I think, the joy of waking up in the morning, or something like that. And it basically
I'm writing that down, by the way. So if you see me
write it down. It helps you understand your different areas of, what you're good at. And I'm going to totally mess this up, so we better read the book. But what you're good at, what gives you joy, and what the world needs. And so find that space in the middle somewhere where all of this makes sense. So I think, yes, obviously there's so many opportunities, but maybe we come back to this inner work. It's really important to kind of figure out first, who are you? What are your values? What are your, I call them the personal superpowers. What are your superpowers? What do you want to do in the world? And once you analyze this, and then see, okay, where are the opportunities? What's needed in the world? So just like for me, I was like, well, what's needed right now is more empathy and kindness. We have so much anxiety in the world. I actually called the program in the first beta round, I called it anxiety-free marketing, because I thought, well, there's so much anxiety. What we need is more, gentleness and kindness and empathy. So that's kind of how I reflected of, okay, who am I? I'm someone gentle. I can bring kindness and empathy. What's needed? Well, that. And then how am I going to do it? Well, I'm going to build an online platform that talks about that. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to, create a course. So I don't know if that's what you meant.
That's perfect. I mean, I love starting with yourself first. I mean, that's vital, because that's what you looked at when you sort of hit that wall. You decided I've got to go back to what my beliefs are, my true self, but I can still use everything I've learned through my life and my career as part of that. So I think that's important too. Don't just throw everything out
Yeah,
that you've learned
so
before, bring
important.
that along with you, but put it in a way that's authentic to what you want to
Yeah,
provide.
in career transitions, it's called the transferable skills, right? And it's so interesting that when we want to go get away from corporate, oftentimes people, like you just said, they would just want to have nothing to do with their past life and nothing to do with their, skills. But that's still who we are. We just need to kind of transfer these skills maybe into something that gives us joy. And that's why I say start with yourself, because if you just build a business that that fills a need, then eventually you'll probably wake up and just be the slave of your own business. So you really need to build something that gives you joy as well.
Yes, that's perfect. I love that. That's definitely a simple way to figure out the right path. Start looking for what gives you joy.
Right.
Perfect. I guess if we could just sort of get back to what you're doing now, because I know we haven't covered a lot of it. We'll just sort of wrap up. If there's anything you want to share about your business, what's going on in that business, maybe some of the transformations you've made in others through this business, anything you want to talk about at all, we'll just sort of leave it wide open and let you run
Mm-hmm.
with it.
All right. Well, what I'm doing right now, this year, 2019, was all about learning. I gave myself permission to say, okay, I'm going to create a program, but I'm going to create it with my ideal client. And so I opened up the Gentle Marketing Revolution program, and I had, now we're in the third beta round. So about 30 people went through it, and that really helped me create a program that is actually needed, because in the past I can't tell you how many small online programs I've created and then was surprised that nobody needed them, right? So
Right.
this time I'm going to do it right, create them with the ideal client. And so, yeah, I really created a program that I feel now is solid, because people went through it. They told me what works, what doesn't work. And I now have a really good understanding of my ideal client as well. That's so important, right? If you want to
Yes.
go out there and market this program now, because you need to talk only to your ideal client. And so I'm going to launch it now officially in January 2020. And yeah, I'm really excited to bring this new and different marketing approach, again, where it's really focused on bringing you joy, and therefore it's kind of a blend between personal development and marketing business advice. Because when I look at all the big marketing gurus or people with big kind of names and platforms, even Tim Ferriss, like I like to take him as an example because everybody knows him.
Right.
It's so interesting how he went through his own transformation as well. And now all of a sudden you hear him talk about, meditation and silence retreats and all of that. That didn't happen 10 years ago, right? And so I really understood that personal development, going inwards and becoming the person that can kind of reach bigger goals is just as important as all the marketing know-how and tools and all of that you can get. So
Yeah.
I think that's super important.
That's great. I mean, I want everybody to sort of, I haven't made a mental note, because I think one thing you said that was just so important that they should go back and listen to again is how you developed this program.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, before you would create these courses because you knew in your mind, you're like, this is what people need. And then you put it out there and you're like, wait a minute, they didn't need it. So now you actually let your people, the people that you attracted that are, matched up with your authentic self, with your message and your mission, create what they need along with you. So I think that's really important. And that's something that a lot of people miss that boat when they spend a lot of time putting together something. And you may have the best intentions in the world, and then you're so defeated when you put it out there and it is not sort of, everybody isn't out rushing out to put their arms around it and take it home with them, and it's really smart. The way you're doing it is a really smart way to do it. So I hope everybody makes a mental note of that. If you're thinking about starting a course, coaching program, almost anything, they talk about market research a lot in the old way of marketing, but this is much different. You're actually taking people through it with you So you're watching them on their journey and able to adjust it and build it along that pathway. So I think that's just a wonderful way to do it.
Thanks, Evan. Yeah, and it also helps me understand what the transformation really is, because I now have, the first ones went through in January, so it's almost going to be a year later, because often the results are not immediate with a change like that, right? It's not like after, a couple of weeks that they're going to be like, oh, my marketing is completely different. But now a year later, they tell me that they have just become much more joyful at this marketing process, because they don't have to wear a marketing mask anymore. It's like, it's just part of me, and I'm just putting myself out there, and it works. People, I like this line from the Jerry Maguire movie, where, not the Show Me the Money one, the other one, where she says, "You had me at hello." When he goes into this long apology speech, she says, "You had me at hello." And I love this line when people you get on a sales conversation with, right? And you go into your spiel about telling them all about what you do. And they're like, you had me at hello. I already know who you are. I know your values. How can I work with you?
Oh, that's great.
That's what I want for all of us, right? Because that's where we connect on the emotional level.
I love that. And that just bred, I could feel that, because that reminded me of my past when I was a personal trainer, and I came from it from a point of, I had a life change, and that's why I got into doing what I wanted to do. It wasn't because, I wanted to just be in a gym all the time. It was because it changed my life. And I remember I would have that same thing with people when I didn't have to sell them, and there was just that connection. And those were the absolute best clients I ever had. And it was a joy to go to work and be with them. Yeah. And a lot of the other ones that were just, I hate to say it, but I needed the money to pay my bills, and I didn't really enjoy them as much. So I think that's great. If you can give your people that kind of transformation in their business, and this is definitely something everybody should go check out. So January 2020 is when it launches.
Yes, and it's the gentlemarketingrevolution.com, or people can also go to the Gentle Business Revolution, which is kind of the big umbrella brand. And I have a podcast under the same name, and they can also get the manifesto, the Gentle Business Manifesto. No opt-in, just an invitation to get the immediate download of the PDF and see if this resonates with you.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'll make sure to put all that in the show notes. So if they wanted to connect with you besides those ways, should they come on social media to find you? Or are you on social media? Do you focus on one?
I'm still mostly on LinkedIn.
I was about to say LinkedIn.
I hang out. Yes. I still do some
like
work
a softball
with
question.
Clients. And that's where people can find me. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, we appreciate it, and I look forward to it. I'm going to have to go over and download the PDF myself, but I think it's great, and I look forward to your launch, and congratulations.
Thank you.
And you'll have to we'll check in with you. I'll watch you on LinkedIn to see what you post as you move into January about all your big wins and celebrations for your clients.
Sounds good.
That'll be awesome. Well, it was nice meeting you, and I appreciate you spending time with us.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Talk to you soon.